1991, my team and I started developing a series called Gargoyles. I know you mean it. It premiered on September 29th, 1994, which means that we are closing in on the 19th anniversary of Gargoyles. I know it says 20th all over that.
It says 20th next year.
Thing, but yeah, 20th is next year.
Yes.
But 19 is still pretty good, and we're pretty excited about that.
Any reason
we have 20th anniversary of Gargoyles coming up next year. How many of you? You I know already. How many of you have heard of our? We had the last one in 2009, the Gathering of the Gargoyles, the annual convention. Any of you actually been to it besides Tony?
No, I wanted to go, but y'all canceled it.
Yeah. What were we thinking?
I don't know.
Anyway, next year, 2014, July 4th weekend, in Minneapolis, there's a convention called CONvergence. And we are reconvening the Gathering of the Gargoyles within the CONvergence convention in Minneapolis.
Yes.
I love you.
I can do no wrong with this one. We will be doing all the things that we used to do at the Gathering convention. That includes the radio play. We'll have other Gargoyles guests besides myself. We will be doing the Blue Mug. We'll be doing all the things that we used to do at Gathering conventions within the confines of the larger CONvergence convention, which has an overall theme next year of Midsummer Night's Dream, which Gargoyles fits very neatly into. But so do a lot of other stuff. So there'll be a lot of great guests that aren't Gargoyles related, but a bunch of Gargoyles guests as well. So the reason I'm bringing this up, it seems a little bit, obnoxious because we're here at MechaCon, and I'm not saying don't come to MechaCon because MechaCon's great. Who loves MechaCon?
Woo!
You can do better than that. Who loves MechaCon? But if you're a Gargoyles fan, you may want to also start saving up for Minneapolis CONvergence, July 4th weekend, 2014, because we will be celebrating 20th anniversary of Gargoyles with a good old-fashioned Gathering of the Gargoyles within CONvergence in 2014.
I will hitchhike if I have to.
You do that, all right. No, don't do that. No hitchhiking. That's not safe. I don't recommend that at all. Phoenix Gate, fine. No hitchhiking. Anyway, I have thousands of old stories about Gargoyles. I am perfectly happy to talk about the comics, DVDs, a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not going to give away a ton of spoilers. I'm just telling that in advance. That's not my style. I don't do that.
You need Rivers on saying spoilers.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna be doing that. So, but I am open to questions, and I have prepared absolutely nothing. But I can go on this topic for hours and hours and hours and hours. So you're in for quite a ride. We'll start with you. Then you gotta give someone else a chance to talk. Okay? Right up front, I'm telling you that now.
What would happen if the Doctor ran into Goliath while he was time traveling to like World War II and the World Tour episode?
I'm probably going to just leave that to your imagination because I'm not that big on crossing over to completely unrelated property. It's just not my thing. So we're going back there, then you.
What was it like working with most of the cast of The Next Generation as voice actors for the show?
It was a blast. I still talk to Marina and Jonathan on occasion. We're all good friends. Those two in particular obviously did a lot of episodes for us and loved the show. I have very fond memories of it. I saw Marina down in Comic-Con in San Diego just last month. We still talk fairly often. Jonathan and I are still good friends. It was great. The rest of the cast, I only know in passing, but I saw both Brent Spiner and Michael Dorn at Comic-Con, and we said hi, and they're really great, fantastic people. All of them are huge buddies. That was a very happy cast with a lot of good times between them. I don't pretend to know them that well, but we had a great time on Gargoyles, and pretty much everyone associated with the show has very fond memories of that show, and I'm very close to Keith David still. Tom Adcox is one of my best friends, the guy who voiced Lexington. Absolutely one of my best friends in the world. And I see Jeff Bennett all the time, Bill Fagerbacke. I see most of those people. I just saw Brigitte Bacco earlier this month. You know, it's like a little family, and that voice cast was just stellar. Ed Asner's like a second dad. He's terrific. So there was someone up front, and then I'll go back there. Yeah.
How was it working with Disney with all this? Was it easy, or did it have hard times as well?
Well, you know, nothing's perfect, but without Disney, there is no Gargoyles. I mean, Disney is the company that I worked for. They own Gargoyles, even though I created it, because I worked for them when I created it. There's no extricating it. It's not like it was Gargoyles and Disney. I was part of Disney, and all of us at Disney made Gargoyles. So it's just one thing. And really, it was a sort of blessed time for the show. The way I compare it is sort of, you know how at an asylum, a mental asylum, there are certain patients there who they give sticks to, and they call them trustees, because they're just a little bit, they're still lunatics, but they're a little bit more trusted than the other lunatics. And I had been a development executive there, so I was the lunatic most trusted. So they kind of left me alone, they gave me a stick, left me alone, let me make the show. I got very little interference doing Gargoyles. A lot of support for 2 years on that show from all my bosses. From my immediate boss was Bruce Cranston, Gary Kreisel, Rich Frank, Jeffrey Katzenberg, all the way up to Michael Eisner. All really thought the show was great and were tremendously supportive of it. Our S&P executive got the show and was very supportive of it, didn't censor us, and we just had a blessed time, and then that time changed. And pretty much all my bosses left Disney. None of them are there anymore, and everything changed. But for a time, when we made those first 2 seasons, we just had everything, all the stars were aligned, and it all just sort of worked out. I'll get to you in a second. There was that guy in back.
Did you ever wonder how popular the show is going to be since it's as big as it is now, even after it stopped showing?
Well, the short answer, I guess, is no. I mean, you know, if someone had said, hey, 19 years from now, you're going to be in New Orleans and talking about Gargoyles, I would have said, really? But the slightly longer answer is, even at the time, I knew it was something special. I mean, it was the first show I ever produced. And even then, and I was young, a lot younger anyway, and I was admittedly pretty arrogant, and I kind of thought, okay, this is the first show I'm going to produce, and then I'll create another show and produce that, another show and produce that. That'll be the way it works. And even then, even with all that arrogance and all that youth, I still knew that Gargoyles was something special, and I knew I'd never quite have anything quite like that again. And because of that, because of the amazing fans of the show, Tony Zucconi's over here. I've known Tony for almost as long as Gargoyles has existed. What was your first gathering?
99?
99. So Tony came to the gathering, got engaged to his ex-wife at the gathering.
He introduced us, by the way.
Yeah, I introduced him to his wife. It was good for a while. So
Yeah, we had 10 good years. That's better than Gargoyles.
yeah. You know, just great fans. They kept my interest in the show high, so I tried to do the same thing for the fans. You know, things like Ask Greg, things like the comics, things like the DVDs are really fan-driven. The fans were there to support it, so we were able to get these things out. And I haven't given up on the show, so I hope none of you guys give up on the show. We're still trying to get Disney to do something with it somewhere, someday, somehow.
Yeah.
Was the like addition of like Arthurian myth or stuff from Shakespeare like an idea from the get-go, or was that thought of later?
It evolved. The big first step was really Macbeth. I'm a huge Shakespeare fanboy.
Yeah.
When we were building the episode that became Enter Macbeth for the first season, it was me and Michael Reeves and Frank Parr talking, and we wanted to do an episode with a character that, to use shorthand, we were thinking in terms of someone like Kraven the Hunter from Spider-Man. And obviously we didn't want to just rip off Kraven the Hunter, but we wanted something in that vein, and we thought about, well, what kind of human without superpowers, without anything, would be able to take on the Gargoyles? And I talked a lot about, well, it would almost have to be someone with the resources of a Bruce Wayne kind of thing. And so we were thinking about someone that would sort of merge sort of that Kraven idea with that Bruce Wayne idea. Not Batman per se, but Bruce Wayne. And I wanted to make sure that as a villain it had some real connection to the Gargoyles themselves. So it wasn't just some random guy who decided, I'm going to hunt down Gargoyles. But it was someone who had a reason and a motivation for it that made sense. And so we came up with this idea of this immortal Scottish guy who wasn't a Highlander.
There can only be one!
Right, and I thought, well, if we're going to do an immortal Scottish king, why not go with the most famous Scottish king there ever was, Macbeth? And we came up with just a few notions there, like there's a line where Macbeth says that he's not really interested in the other gargoyles, they're pawns, he's after their queen, and Goliath's sort of confused and says, queen, we have no queen, and he's talking about Demona, and Goliath says, you know Demona? And he says, know her, I
Name her!
Thank you. And so we just have this idea of the connection between Macbeth and Demona. And then I had a couple people doing research for me into old Scottish history. There was my assistant, Monique Beatty, who's now a producer in her own right over at Nickelodeon. And a friend of mine named Tuppence McIntyre, who isn't in the industry at all. She's a deputy district attorney for Los Angeles County, but she's just interested in Scottish history. And so they did a bunch of research for me, and we learned all about the historical Macbeth as opposed to Shakespeare's Macbeth. And that story was such a great story that became City of Stone in season 2, and we weaved Demona and the Weird Sisters in and out of it, so we were combining Shakespeare's Macbeth and the historical Macbeth and the Gargoyle Macbeth, and they just became one, and that just gave us a lot of great stories. And when you start with that, it's not a big jump to the Weird Sisters, obviously, because they're in the play Macbeth. It's not a big jump to starting to include characters like Puck. Stand up, Puck. Show 'em. Puck has the War of Arcanorum.
Eye of Odin.
Eye of Odin and the Phoenix Gate.
What?
So he's trouble.
Yeah.
The notion of bringing more and more Shakespeare in, part of it was driven by me, part of it was my writers realizing they could pander to my tastes and get their stuff approved.
Yeah.
And so we just kept doing more and more of that stuff, and it began to help define our universe. Yeah, right. Wait, you just had one, right?
No, I was stretching. I didn't have a question. So.
Oh, you didn't? All right, so back there. It has.
Was it coincidence or a connection that so many Star Trek cast members voiced?
Yeah, actually that was. The slight twist to your question is Marina Sirtis auditioned for Demona and Elisa, in fact, but was just perfect for Demona. She was actually the very first person to audition, period. I mean, we had a day when we were bringing in actors for all 7 or 8 of our lead roles, and the very first person in the door was Marina Sirtis. She auditioned for Demona first. She was amazing as Demona. Then she auditioned for Elisa, and she was kind of so-so for Elisa.
Wow.
But we just knew she was Demona, and it was kind of difficult because we had a bunch of other Demonas coming in that day. But we kind of knew it was her. Jonathan auditioned for Xanatos and was great. And so we cast those two. And then in the course of producing the series, we don't have time to audition every single character, we're just casting. And so, you know, you're sitting in the room, and for last week's episode, you're going, okay, you know, I'm there with Jamie Thomason, who's both our voice director and our casting director, and he's going, so what do we need for next week? Who do we need for next week? And I'd be like, well, we need Goliath's brother. So since he's Goliath's brother, he's got to be a big guy, big deep voice like Keith David. Who out there has a big deep voice like Keith David who could play Goliath's brother? And then, you know, you look out in the other room and there's Marina and Jonathan, and so I'm like, well, what about Michael Dorn? You know, and so that kind of thing happened a lot, where just because they were there, it put the idea of the next gen actors in our head. And then at some point we started chasing it. You know, in other words, it's like, oh, well, we had Nicole Nichols from the original series playing Elisa's mom. We had Michael Dorn and Brent Spiner and LeVar Burton and all sorts of people from Next Generation. We got Cole Meany. We got Avery Brooks. We got Kate Mulgrew. At some point we chased it just because it was fun and cool and a little publicity worthy. Now, we never would have cast someone if they were wrong for a role, but that was a great troupe of actors in the Star Trek universe in those days, and excuse me, and so we kind of pursued it a little bit because it was a lot of fun. Yeah, Puck.
Now people requested it. Would they make a live Gargoyles movie? Yes.
Well, for about 5 to 8 years, maybe even a little longer, they tried to make a live Gargoyles movie at Touchstone. With a bunch of different writers. They went through a bunch of different scripts, none of which I saw. I actually worked on the treatment of the very first version with Michael Reeves, which they didn't like. And they blew us off and went with another writer, another writer, another writer, somewhere in there, including Simon Kinberg, who's now one of my partner executive producers on Star Wars Rebels. He did a pass on it. They never found a script they liked, and they put it aside. Now they're developing a movie, live action movie called Gargoyles, not based on the TV series. Yeah, it doesn't thrill me either. But what I will say is they've been through at least 2 writers on that and still haven't found a script that they like in that version either.
They've taken everything, give me my movie!
And it's about gargoyles who wake up in Manhattan in the modern day and meet a New York City police detective.
That's not based on anything, is it?
But Disney owns it. That's what you got to keep in mind. It's not. They can't rip it off because it's theirs.
Screw Disney.
So, well, don't say that because they own the thing. Yeah.
I have a question.
Well, that's why we're here.
Did the cast ever try to pull pranks on each other when they were voice acting, recording their roles?
Well, it's pretty easy in any recording session when you've got, you know, between 5 and 18 people recording parts to
pull pranks.
Well, not pranks so much as that, you know, they start laughing and the laughter sort of cascades, and pretty soon we've completely lost control of the session. We got to calm everybody down and try and get back into it. There are no pranks that I can think of per se, but there was a lot of times where people were trying to crack each other up, and that happens.
Just kept messing it up, huh?
Yeah, you know, but we get it done. So, yeah.
How was it doing episodes where like the reality was twisted, but not, you know, not really twisted? It was like just in their mind, like when Lexington turned evil. It was a cyborg.
I mean, future tense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was an exciting episode to do on a lot of levels. You know, it was a very powerful episode because we were talking about and/or showing the death of many characters. It was very shocking. It was intended to be very shocking. So, you know, it was I don't specifically, honestly, remember that recording session per se, but I definitely, you know, remember the effect that the episode had, and, you know, it's a heartbreaking episode in a lot of ways. Broadway's death is one of the, you know, most powerful scenes from anything I've worked on that I've ever seen.
I cried.
And Brooklyn wound up with Demona. That was creepy.
A lot of shock
Imagine
the kid.
I was like,
yeah.
what the fuck?
You've been gone for 2
years. Netflix, is there a chance that Gargoyles is going to be back on streaming on Netflix, or no?
I have no idea. You know, they don't keep me up to speed on that stuff. One would hope. But you know, now the DVDs are all out. Let me talk about product for just a second. First season's been out on DVD for years. You can still get it on Amazon and places like that. Second season, Volume 1's been out for years, same deal. Second season, Volume 2 is now out. Many of you may not know that, but as a Disney Movie Club exclusive, you can get it that way. You can also get it through Disney Movie Club's eBay store without joining their club. So you can get you can get all 65 episodes from the first and second season. The third season is Goliath Chronicles. I don't count that. You guys can if you want, but I don't. Instead of getting the third season, which is not available on DVD, what I'd recommend is that you purchase the 3 Gargoyles trade paperback comic books published by Slave Labor Graphics, or SLG. I wrote them. They pick up right where the second season leaves off. So it's sort of our unofficial third season, or official third season. They're canon to the TV series. I wrote every issue. Got some great artists who worked on them. The first book is called Gargoyles Clan Building Volume 1. Then there's Gargoyles Clan Building Volume 2. And then there's Gargoyles Bad Guys, which was one of our spin-offs. So I would definitely recommend you picking up those 3 trades. They're really great reads, if I do say so myself. If you like the first 2 seasons of Gargoyles, I really think you'll like these comic trades.
Really good.
And so all those are available for purchase. And again, the best way to show Disney that you want more Gargoyles is with your wallet. It's just a fact of life. Disney's a company with stockholders that need to make money, and the best way to prove to them that Gargoyles is a viable property that you want more material on is to buy it. And nothing's going to change that. Yeah. Nope, you.
Me?
Yep.
Sorry, there's a lot of people behind me.
I know.
Okay, I was reading the TV tropes page for Gargoyles one day, and they had Word of God and Word of Gay. And according to Word of God, Lexington is gay, and I want to make sure it's not internet rumor.
In my mind, yes. Lexington is
Okay.
gay. You know, that's nothing I was able to show, certainly not in the 90s on TV.
They're prudish, I know.
But in my mind, that was the case. Yeah. Yeah.
I have to ask, was it...
You don't have to ask.
No, I want to know, was it just happenstance that the same couple, or was it deliberate that they just kept running into the Gargoyles, unfortunately,
Margot. Margot and Brendan.
Talking about Brendan
and Margot.
Yeah.
Well, there are a couple different answers to that. And the short answer is that, you know, we can only design so many background characters. And they were 2 of ours that we used, but also it was funny. I mean, Brendan and Margot were very funny characters. And so as time passed, we sort of actively wanted them in there and put them in there. And Margot's reactions were always pretty funny. And Brendan being this sort of put upon guy. And again, if you read the comic books, Margot, to a great extent, and Brendan to a slightly lesser extent, have very important roles in the comics. So they actually, as time passed, went from being these sort of background characters to being actual significant, important characters in the series. Yeah.
Since you said from the get-go that you would not be entering spoilers, does that mean that if Disney ever did give you the go-ahead to make more, you would know where to go? Like
I've got notebooks and notebooks and notebooks full of story ideas for Gargoyles. There's literally no way in hell I could live long enough to tell all the stories that I've got for this series. They go at least to the year 2199 and beyond, and they go back before. Well, into BC time. So, you know, I've got this long timeline.
Oh! Sorry guys, but it's, my camera died. Those sort of things happen. I don't understand why it had to happen in the middle of the Greg Weisman thing. The last thing he said was the thing about the notebooks, wasn't it? Like, he had notebooks full of stuff about gargoyles going forward and backward in time. And he also said that he's going to his grave with them. Like, he's not giving those up. So, if we want them, we kind of have to make gargoyles a thing. I mean, Greg Weisman, if he's going to say anything, he's going to say, 1, no spoilers, 2, I'm coming here with nothing, and 3, show him you love it with your money. So, he also talked about his new book coming up, which is Reign of the Ghost. There will be links in the dangly-do. Myself and B have bought 10 of them for ourselves and friends. This is, of course, assuming that there are at least 8 friends between us. Sorry about missing the end of the thing, but you got to see the meat of it, and it was great. And you also got to see it before they all turned on beef. So yeah, sorry I don't have more, but hope you enjoyed what I gave you.